This episode is brought to you by Homemade. What is Homemade?
Well, glad you asked. Homemade is a turnkey house flipping service we've built to solve the needs of aspiring flippers like you who want to get started in house flipping but want to do it with the backing of a professional and experienced team.
We've designed Homemade so that our team will be with you through every step of the house flipping journey.
Our team will deliver investment-grade properties straight to your inbox,
Work with you to design your project to maximize ROI,
oversee all the renovations, and handle all permitting requirements.
and along the way, we'll hook you up with our vetted network of service providers to help finance, insure, and stage your property.
Once the project is wrapped, we'll be with you arm in arm to execute your exit plan, whether that's through a sale as a flip or holding the property in your personal portfolio as either a long or short-term rental.
At Homemade, we've taken the outdated and frustrating house flipping process and turned it into a seamless and rewarding experience so that novice and even seasoned flippers can have access to this investment class without having to delve too deep into the nitty-gritty everyday headaches that this business often entails.
At Homemade, we do the heavy lifting for you. So if you've always wanted to flip a house, head on over to homemade.co to learn more about our platform and apply to work with us.
That's homemade.co. Peace.
Hey, Flipsters, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Lincoln, and we are happily married.
But not to each other.
Yeah, we're old friends from college, and we're flipping houses in the Austin, Texas area.
And we're taking you along for the ride. Hey, Flipsters, welcome back.
Hey, welcome. It's another episode of the Austin Flipsters podcast.
It is another one, and this one is juicy.
Oh, is it?
This is all about that time that Lincoln got scammed.
I got scammed, y'all. I got scammed bad. And I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm going to spill the tea, and I'm going to help you guys make sure you don't ever get scammed the way I got scammed. So painful, so traumatic. If you don't know who we are, I'm Lincoln. This is my co-host, Lauren.
Yes, and we are the Austin Flipsters on YouTube. We're renovating houses in the Austin area and taking you behind the scenes of our projects and even further behind the scenes in the podcast.
First, I want to check in with you, Lauren. I want to know, how you doing? How you been?
I'm good. So I feel like later in the episode, it's going to be your chance to rant.
Oh, I'm going to rant.
So I have a rant that I
Okay.
need to get
Yeah.
off my chest.
Yeah, okay.
So it's January as we're filming this, and starting to look ahead to spring break.
Yeah.
Spring break plans and trying to figure that out. And so I have 3 kids, so we're a family of 5. And here's my beef with hotels. Okay. And you're going to find this out soon because you're about to be a family of 5.
Oh.
So when you go and say like, I want to go to a certain area, right? The cool thing about the internet is now you can just say, I want to go here are the dates, and it'll pull up all the hotels. You can check the rates. You're not going to all these different websites.
Easy.
Totally love that. But it auto populates to 2 people, right? And so first of all, you can't even book a hotel room for 5 people. They make you do 2 rooms, or you just lie and say 4, which is what I always do. And you cram in there, right?
Did you just expose yourself as a hotel scammer?
Yes.
Or you...
Well, I'm not going to be in a separate, like, my kids are still pretty young.
Then how do you do, what's the sleeping arrangement? You put all the kids in one bed, or you do like a sleeping bag?
It
or...
depends on the beds. So if there's like, actually what works the best is like a king size bed. And so then me, my husband, and my youngest can be in that. And then the 2 girls can be in like a pull out couch situation.
Oh.
That's actually the best.
Okay.
Queen beds, it's just like one of these things. Somebody usually ends up on the floor, a kid, not me.
No,
But it's not ideal, but it's like, I'm not want to pay for 2 rooms.
Yeah.
And then are you going to divide? Like,
Yeah.
that's weird. So anyway, that's not the point of the story. It doesn't even
is
matter. Even if you had 4 people, this is a wrong that needs to be fixed. So you turn it from 2 people to 4, all the prices double, like double, or even like 1.5 times what they were before. And it's like, it's the same room. If you got 2 people in there, if you got 4 people in there, if you got 5, it's the same. You have the same number of rooms. You're in the same location. They even offer the same bed configurations. Like, why you got to be charging me twice as much money? It's not free breakfast. This is not like including anything other than the room. Like,
that's an honesty tax right there. You know, that's just a tax for
Totally.
being honest. Have you ever showed up and then they were like, I'm sorry, you said 2 people and you got 5?
well, in New York, I said 4 people and we showed up with 5. And they were like, yeah. Well, first of all, I think I bought a king suite, and then they were like, yeah, I think it was down to like a queen. And then the queen suite was not cutting it. It was a little too tight. And, but it's all they had. And anyway, they were a little like, they kind of look at you, but they don't
Do you ever just sneak them in? Just you go check in solo.
If you're in like a road trip, do that all the time. But like when you're rolling up in New York City with your suitcases.
Hopping out of the cab.
And
with
the
Uber
lobby
with all
is like this big, it's different.
Should have sent them down the street, go get a little treat, go get a little something they can't see.
Yeah.
And then,
But I just thought that was totally bogus. Like, why are there not more family friendly hotels or just charge me the same rate?
does it up their costs in any way? They gotta spring for 4 continental breakfasts or
no,
something.
I'm saying this is not breakfast. This is not Hampton Inn. This is like nice hotels where you don't get breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway.
I don't know. If you guys know, leave a comment below
Yeah,
why
just
they
it's
think
bogus.
they can get away with that. I agree. I mean, you're ultimately
bogus.
getting the same product, which is just a room for the night.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That ain't right.
You don't seem fired up about this. I think you haven't planned vacations lately, or you always. It's like it works for 4 people, but just wait. This is gonna make you mad.
I'm stressed. We're about to be a family. By the time you hear this, I would be a family of 5 in my family, and I'm a little nervous about the hotel situation. I gotta say, because it doesn't work well to begin with. I do not like sharing a queen bed with my wife. I want that full on king.
Yeah.
There's not enough space. And then I don't like sleeping with kids either. They're throwing elbows and no. So I don't know what we're going to do here.
Yeah. You got to spring for the villas.
I guess we'll just try
or go to Airbnb, but that's also expensive. I heard this commercial the other day for Airbnb, and it was like, if you're going on a trip with friends, why pay for 4 hotel rooms when you can get Airbnb? I'm like, yeah, that's when the math makes sense. If you're getting 4 hotel rooms, but who's getting 4 hotel? Like, nobody. Everybody's cramming in there.
Yeah.
So you're saying, like, I like Airbnbs. You get more space, but I don't know.
That's what I'm doing. We're doing next fall, doing guys football trip to University of Florida. Never been. See the Gators, go to the swamp. Get an Airbnb because the hotels are crazy and it's like 3 dudes. We all need our own bedroom. I'm not trying to be a grown man sharing a bed with buddies, old, school buddies. So we're just doing the Airbnb and it's cheaper and it's easier and it worked out last time.
Sometimes it is, but some of these Airbnbs, they're charging. I guess is it nice?
Supply
Do you care
demand.
what it is? Like.
I don't know. I don't care. It's all about
I'm like always very particular about.
I mean, I care. I have standards, but it's more about the sleeping situation with dudes where it's like, grow dudes. We just need our own space. So I need
your own bathroom.
I need my own. I don't even care about the bathroom. I mean, that would be nice. I'm booking the Airbnb and putting it on my credit card and then they pay me back. So I get the suite, Okay. That's the perk of doing that.
This is like, you're like the Real Housewives. They're always fighting over who gets the primary suite.
Well, it's whoever booked it, right? It's whoever books it first. And then, you know what? You want to be proactive and go book the accommodations. It's great. I will reimburse you and I will get one of the secondary bedrooms. But if I'm booking it, I'm getting that suite and I'm getting that suite bathroom and I'm not dealing with your stinky butt. Okay. You know what I mean? So why are we talking about this? This is just your rant.
This is just my rant.
I feel your pain. Well, yeah. Speaking of football.
Yes.
We're the college national championship.
Did you watch it last night?
I watched it. This is the day after the college national championship. I watched it. I mean, it was. I knew Michigan was going to win.
Did you?
Oh yeah. I mean, they looked the best. When they beat Alabama, I was like, oh yeah, they're going to win.
I think their coach is going to the NFL.
Yeah, is he? I guess he kind of completed his mission, and he's like.
Well, they're like he's going to cut bait before he gets caught for cheating.
Well, I thought he already got caught and punished. No, there's more.
There might be more.
More going to come out.
Maybe.
Oh, and then they're going to have a whole Astros situation where they're getting the asterisk on the championship.
Exactly. Maybe.
I mean,
TBD.
Are there any asterisks at this point? We're just paying these kids millions of dollars. It's a pro league. Like, what is cheating
Can we
anymore?
talk about the portal?
Yeah.
Because currently I like it.
I can't even tell you all the rules on the portal now with how
there
many.
There are no rules. It's
just
the Wild West.
Anyone in the portal at any time?
Yeah. And you just like go in there whenever. And I don't know. I feel like there needs to be like, you get one freebie so that you're not like, you can go where you want. But then after that, you got to sit out a year.
You don't want these kids. You want to restrict the movement of these kids. You want to restrict their educational opportunities.
I do not. I just, it's
what do you
like
want then? You want to control their lives and make them play for your school forever?
No, it's just disruptive. How is anybody ever going to have a good team if everybody's moving all the time? It's just like chaotic.
Well, what if you do it NFL style? You give them a contract, a multi-year contract. You're paying these kids.
Right. Yeah.
Are they, is any of that happening at this point on the NIL?
I bet it'll come to that. It'll probably come to where it's like, we'll pay you this year, and then we're going to double it the next, incentivize them to
But
stay.
they're not like, it's not contractually holding them there in the way that the NFL does, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
You want people to be happy.
well, I guess.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, of course you want to be happy. Of course you want to get paid. It's getting ridiculous. You're saying some of the money it's all sort of shady, right? How much these people are actually making as college football players or whatever. But like, you gotta think. What's interesting to me is this line now between like a high-end draft pick, somebody's going to get paid in the NFL, versus like a star at their school but wouldn't be a high draft pick. That person used to just declare as soon as they possibly could to try and get paid before they got hurt.
Right.
But now you got to be thinking, I can get paid more in college than if I go as one of these late round draft picks. Yeah.
Well, here's an angle I think people are not thinking about. They're just thinking about the now, the here and the now, versus the rest of their life. So if you go to a school and you're a star for 3 years, people are going to know who you are.
Yeah.
You go to the NFL, you play, great.
Yeah.
However long that career lasts or doesn't,
Yeah.
you're going to have a network from that school of people who are going to give you a job or an opportunity because they know you. Oh yeah, it was awesome. You did well. If you're jumping around and you're doing 1 year at each school, that's not enough time for people to get behind you, give you a nickname, feel like they know you.
Yeah.
You're just sort of,
That's a good point. Unless you're Jalen Daniels, who transferred and won the Heisman in his first year at LSU, I guess. Then
so if you win
you're
the
set for
Heisman,
life.
if you win the Heisman, you're set anyway.
Totally.
That's fine.
Yeah. There's a surprising amount of kids that transferred and then won the Heisman.
Yeah, the Oklahoma guy.
Baker Mayfield did it.
Yeah.
The Kyler Murray did it. Like, there's been several of them. And
So is any of our portal people going to do it? We're getting a lot of
I
portal
hope so.
people. Have you checked Mike Elko's Twitter?
He's always
The Johnny Manziel?
Yeah. We're Texas. If you guys don't know, we follow the Texas A&M Aggies as our alma mater, and so we got a new head coach this year, Mike Elko. He was our former defensive coordinator. He went to be the head coach at Duke, and then we sucked him back in, baby. Fired old Jimbo. Gave Jimbo
Still paying him.
Paying him. That what an insane. This guy got $75 million to go away.
Yeah, I heard he did an interview and they were like, "How do you feel about that?" He's like, "I'm okay.
I'm okay.
Good.
I'm good. I'm at peace with this decision." What's my buyout on this podcast going to be, Lauren? How much are you going to pay to get rid of me?
To go away?
Once I just keep dragging the show down beyond all recognition, and it's like we got to rebrand. What's my buyout going to be, do you think?
I don't know. It depends on. I don't know.
I hope it's 75
Not
million.
75 million.
I hope it is.
Speaking of 75 million, is that what you lost in this deal we're about to talk about?
It's
Approaching?
No. It was approaching $75 million. It was nowhere near that, but it was definitely the most money I've ever been scammed out of.
This is the craziest story to me.
Yeah, so I guess we should give you guys a little bit of context on what happened with the deal, and I want to get into it. I want to walk you through.
Are you you're gonna tell your full truth?
I want to speak my truth. Well, I think first of all, I want to set up why I think this is important, why we're talking about it on the show,
Right.
because it has to do with doing a real estate deal, and it has to do with title insurance. But I want this PSA because I think you and I have a show on the internet about doing successful real estate deals, about deals that go right, about deals that make money, about all the pros of real estate investing, which
There are plenty.
and we are ardent spokespeople for. We've built careers around that. But I just want to take an opportunity to also, be real with people and also share that there are things that can go wrong. There are risks in this industry. The risk of scam is in any industry. So I want people to sort of be aware of some of these things. I want you guys to know the truth of what happened to me, how I got scammed, how you can avoid that, what to think through. And, I want to take the opportunity so that our viewers can be, wiser, I guess,
Educated.
and more educated, more savvy than I was, and learn from my mistakes, because I've learned a ton from other people's mistakes. I mean, that's the best way to learn from mistakes, is from other people's mistakes.
It's more effective when it's your own.
And so I hope this is an opportunity to do that. So that's why we're talking about it here. This is just a learning opportunity and a ranting opportunity, because
I was gonna say, in a public forum for taking down the people that did you wrong.
I don't. You know what? I know. I'm going to mention some of the people that were involved in the transaction. It's not to be sort of vengeful or whatever. It's just put it out there so people are fully aware. and speak the truth of what happened, because it's crazy. I think actually this scam has like legal implications for the entire title industry in the state of Texas.
Whoa.
This set an incredibly
Dangerous precedent
that basically, I think, nullifies a lot of title policies, in my legal opinion. By the way, I'm not a lawyer. It's not legal advice, so don't take it as such. But in my layman's opinion, is like a really scary thing for folks. So I want people to be aware of it.
Yep. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's start from the beginning.
Okay. Well, yeah. So I think,
first of all, let's just set the table. Title insurance.
Yes, I think that's a great place.
What is that? Why do you need it? Why is it important?
Yeah. So when I was first starting out in real estate, like, you would hear horror stories about deals that went wrong, and I felt like the moral of the story was always like, and that's why you get title insurance.
What is title? Let's back up even further.
Yeah. So people presented it as like this. That's the reason you get title insurance. It saves you from risk. And what title insurance is basically like any form of insurance. It's you paying a premium to an insurance provider, and in exchange, they guarantee
that if something goes catastrophically wrong, they've got you covered.
Exactly. And in this case, it has to do with the title of your real estate. So title is just basically like who owns a piece of property, right? And a piece of property transfers from one person to the other via a deed. So,
and it's registered in the county, so that it's not like you can just give a house to somebody without them knowing.
Exactly. So like, if you hold the title to this house, that means you're on the title, you own it. Then you sign over a deed to me. That deed says, I'm passing the title to Lincoln, right? And so now I have the title via the deed that gave it to me.
Yeah. And if for some reason I didn't actually own this house, and I sold it to you fraudulently,
exactly,
your title policy would kick in.
Right. So the title policy ensures that you actually own that property in the way that you say you did. So if anybody else came forward, an heir, or somebody said it was a fraud, or there's any issues with it, then maybe you don't really own that property. You don't really have the title, but that title insurance policy kicks in, and
you get your money back, basically.
The insurance policy would kick in, and the title company would give you the money back, the underwriter of that title policy.
Okay.
Yes. So
so that they don't have to do that, they do their homework on the front end to make sure that I own the property.
Exactly. So it's like...
That's how it's supposed to work.
This is how it's supposed to work. It's actually, from an insurance underwriting perspective, it should be like the lowest risk form of insurance, because like if you think about other forms of insurance, like health insurance, for example, if you want to go get like a life insurance policy or health insurance policy, they'll ask questions about your past to like give them clues about what might happen in the future, right? So are you a smoker? Do you do risky activities?
Right. But if I get in a car accident the next day.
Exactly. They're going to have to pay out. But with title insurance, what's crazy is that they have all the evidence, all the things that they're insuring against are things that happened in the past, not in the future.
Right.
So it's not like somebody can come out of nowhere and suddenly claim your property. It's transferred in the past. So the title company actually gets to underwrite that policy, and they can go back and look at what they call the chain of title, which is basically this chain of deeds going from one person to the next to say, okay, Lauren sold it to Lincoln sold it to producer Massiel sold it to Joe Schmo, etc. And they can trace that back, and they can look at that chain of title and see if there's any problems with it. And they get to your point, all of this gets typically recorded in like tax records in the county records. And so they can examine that and say like, yeah, it looks good. I'm willing to insure this. So all the risk that they're insuring has already happened in the past.
Right.
So it's typically a pretty safe bet. Now, the reason that like a lot of these moral of the stories always end with, and that's why you get title insurance, it's because people basically trying to buy and sell property just through the deed without going through this process of insuring it. Because you can do that. You could just deed me over your house and say, yeah, I own it. Trust me. Here's the deed, and we can record it. But if I don't have an insurance policy on that, to your point, if that was fraud, or let's say you inherited that property and your brother owns the other half of it.
Right.
He comes out of the woodwork later and says, no, she can't sell that. I own it. I have an interest in that. Now you got a problem on your hands. Now you got a lawsuit or whatever with the brother or whoever's claiming an interest in that. Right.
Yep.
So that's why the moral of the story always ended with, and that's why you get title insurance.
Okay. And why are you saying maybe not?
And so I guess what I'm saying is like, that's what I believed forever. And that's why I've gotten title insurance on every transaction I've ever done.
Yep.
Sometimes, you sell it twice and you get 2 policies, right? Because it's just the thing
that's what you do.
You're conditioned to do. And it turns out, Lauren, title insurance, kind of big fat scam.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Well, maybe not all.
You got to start from the beginning.
So I'll tee this up. So basically what happened is I got scammed buying a piece of property here in Austin.
And it was a lot, right?
This was a lot, a vacant lot on the east side of town. And, I've bought and sold a lot of properties from wholesalers, and I've done wholesale deals myself. So basically, for those of you who don't know, a wholesale deal is basically where one person puts a property under contract, and instead of them actually buying that property, they flip the contract to you, or you simultaneously buy and sell that property on the exact same day. So they're sort of arbitraging. They may contract to buy a property, say for $100,000, and turn around and sell that contract for you to buy it at 110 or 120, and they get to keep that spread, but they never really own that property, and they never really need the money to do that. And so the property that I got scammed on was a lot from a wholesaler. So this wholesaler had a piece of property that she said, hey, I got the seller to agree to sell this property to me. I don't know what she would have had that property at, but she said, Lincoln, you can buy this property for $200,000 was the price on this thing. And it was a weird deal from the beginning.
Red flags.
So it was...
Are these in hindsight, or did you feel apprehensive at the time?
So what's crazy is that there were red flags, and I was like kind of suspicious of the transaction because I was worried about getting scammed in one way, and I got scammed in a completely different way. Okay. So there was some fishy stuff going on with the transaction, and then it turned out that fishy stuff I was worried about wasn't fishy at all.
What was the thing you're worried about?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Lauren. So I got this contract, and the first thing I was like a little bit like, was that it was a corner lot. And when I looked up the address, the legal description and the street address like didn't match. It had the side street address listed instead of the main street. Like those didn't sync up.
Okay.
So I was like, is this...
they didn't know their own address.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So a property will have a legal description, which is sort of like a much
the
more...
lot and block number.
The lot and block number, it's a more formal description of the property that's not just the street address. And that's what the title company uses to transfer the title. But colloquially, you use the street address. And so those things didn't sync up. I called the title company and confirmed, hey, this is the right legal description. And that checked out. Okay, red flag number one. Assuaged. But then the next thing that was a little sus, as the kids say, was that there had been an amendment to this, to the contract that I was basically being assigned.
Okay.
And they had done the amendment wrong because they had modified, I'm going to get the detail wrong. I think they changed the closing date, but they tried to change the closing date on 2 separate contracts with one amendment. So what I
tried to change the closing date for their contract and then now your contract?
No. So what happened was there were 2 lots that this person was trying to wholesale.
Okay.
And I learned this because of this amendment. So it was the same wholesaler and the same seller, and they put both lots under contract, and she tried to wholesale both of them.
And the lots are next door to each other?
They are right down the street from each other, but they're not adjacent.
Neighbors.
But they're the same seller, same rough part of town, same type of property. So a little weird. And she was trying to push back both transactions, and she tried to do just one amendment and say, okay, I want to push back the closing on property A and property B at the same time, which is not how you're supposed to do that. You should have... These are 2 separate
also it
contracts.
Introduces property A, and you maybe didn't even know about property A.
I didn't know about property A.
Right.
And so this was another kind of red flag. I was already worried about the address of this thing. Now I saw sort of another address on
Why
here.
did you proceed with this?
Title insurance, Lauren. Title insurance.
Because it was a slam and deal. Was it a good deal?
It
Like,
was.
what was the lot worth, in your opinion?
It was not my opinion. I got an offer to buy the lot from me 1 week after I closed on it for $325,000.
Okay.
And I bought it for $200,000. So this was the chance to make $125,000 in 6 days.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, for any of you out there saying like, oh, well, of course, sounds too good to be true. Like, well, how could you not have known? Like, for context, I mean, this happens all the time in the real estate deal. I'd say once every 12 to 18 months, like I've gotten a deal like this.
What was that Bertram deal? Our
very first YouTube video was a deal where we just like, I think we made about $100,000 on it, where it was like, just bought it at the right price, a seller that needed to sell. And I've probably done this 4 or 5 times, like in my career, every 18 months, 2 years or whatever, maybe once a year, a deal like that comes along. So it's not like crazy, but I was excited about this deal.
Yeah.
And why I was like, okay, if we can get through some of these issues with the contract, it's worth doing. That's why you get title insurance, because, you know, it's such a screaming deal. But yeah, to answer your question, it was a hell of a deal.
So you're blinded by the light. Or you were willing to look past. So
no, and it wasn't even willing to look past. I 100% am not going to do this deal if we couldn't get the contract cleaned up.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. I went to them and I said, hey, what's the deal with this? And we resolved that issue. We got 2 separate contract amendments.
Okay.
But here was the next red flag. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just curious.
You got questions.
And maybe this is for the end of the podcast, but like, has this experience shaped future experience? Are you much more cautious now?
100%. It shaped it, and I think in ways you might not expect.
Oh, okay.
But you got to have the full context. I think to appreciate it.
Okay. Let's keep rolling then.
Okay. So we cleared up this like contract amendment, but to your point, I learned that there's a second property.
Right.
And I was like,
that's odd.
Well, that's odd. What's up with the second property? And maybe I want it. If it's as screaming a deal as this one is, maybe I want it.
I want to be defrauded twice.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Go home. Okay.
And so
you didn't think it was weird that a wholesaler got 2 deals so close together from the same seller?
No, and that's common, right?
Okay.
So if you need to sell one property, you may need to sell another. Like a lot of times it's people looking to get cash or liquidate or whatever. And so, I mean, I ask sellers like, hey, you got anything else? Got anything else? Okay. So, and I've done deals like that before where they're a package deal. So that wasn't odd in it.
And was the wholesaler somebody you had come across before?
No. So that was a shady thing. And I've bought from plenty of people that I don't know. Again, that's not shady in and of itself if you get title insurance, right?
Okay.
Because it's that is the sort of mediator of trust. Like I don't need to trust you as a person if I can trust the contract, right?
Right.
So I didn't know this person.
But really need to trust the title company.
That's the moral of the story is don't trust the title company. But I didn't know this person, to your point. No, I got it from a local investor group that puts out deals like this, right? Okay. And so what was shady is when I asked about this other property, I was like, what's the deal? Can I get my hands on that? And they said, no, it's still, let's see, they're still working through title issues on it. And that was really why I had kind of like a reservation because I went to the title company. And now for context on this, like I want to tell you a little bit about title companies, how they're set up. So basically there's an insurance policy, right? And there's an underwriter of it. And in this case, it was called WFG National. They're a massive insurance underwriter. They do life insurance and other types of insurance, right? Okay. So they're sort of ultimately the one that issues this policy, but it's issued on behalf of a title company. In this case, it was a title company called Texas Title. Okay. Right? So basically...
Blast them.
Don't do business with Texas Title.
Name them. Name them.
So Texas Title is the title company that you work with. And they use a policy underwritten by WFG. Now there's a third layer of complexity because there's something called a fee attorney. So basically a fee attorney can have an agreement with a title company that says, hey, I'll close your deals at my office. And really their arrangement is sort of like they're an agent of this title company where they draw up the paperwork, they get you to come in and sign it, they get a small fee. And so all three of these companies work together to issue the same policy. And it's less common to do these fee offices, but you might do that with a title company that doesn't have a physical location somewhere or whatever. And that's what
it's like a lawyer for hire.
Exactly.
So the bigger title companies, they have lawyers within the company.
So they have escrow officers. They don't necessarily use a fee attorney. They may have like a deed or some documents drafted by an attorney, but it's not closed.
Did you know all this before this happened, or
I've learned. I've learned. So I was loosely aware with the concept of like a fee attorney and a title. I'd say 90%. I don't know if I had ever even closed a deal with a fee attorney rather than a title company and if I had, it went smoothly. Like I never thought anything of it. But this was a fee attorney in town called Wally Tingley, which is a hell of a name. Wally Tingley and Associates was the fee attorney. And he had a reputation.
Sounds like a lawyer on Breaking Bad or something.
I know, right? Better call Wally.
Better call Wally Tingley.
Yeah.
Better not.
And he had a reputation for doing some like creatively structured deals. I learned this afterwards. But in Texas, title insurance is basically commoditized. So you actually can't charge different rates. It's all standardized. So like what I pay one title company is going to be what I pay another one.
Okay.
Which is really interesting. So title companies basically just have to compete on service, right? It's a really commoditized thing.
Why is that?
Well, it's regulated. So the state says they have a schedule of so you know exactly what you're going to pay for your title policy premiums based on the price of your house. So a lot of people treat it like a commodity, actually. So
the more expensive the house, the more expensive the policy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And the underwriters can vary. A lot of times people won't even know who the policy, their title policy is through. For most people, it's like a formalities. It's something they never think of again or hear from again.
Yeah.
So anyway, Wally Tingley was the fee attorney's office that was closing this transaction. And I asked them, I was like, why? This was the red flag. So 2 transactions, one of them I'm getting, the other one I can't get because there's title issues. Well, that didn't make sense to me because, so I went to the title company. I said, hey, if it's the same seller, same part of town, how would one of them have title issues and not the other? You'd think they both would, because I didn't get the full, the title company said, we're still tracking down some of the heirs. So to what we were talking about earlier, it's like to sell a property, you need to make sure you have title. Well, if it's been inherited or whatever, a lot of times you'll need the heirs to sign off on it, and it can be hard to find those people. Sometimes.
What if you never find them?
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, sometimes deals die that way. And so I didn't get a full explanation, but I was like, it stands to reason if it's the same seller, you'd think they'd have the same heirs. It would have come through the family in the same way. So you'd expect the same title issues, but apparently not. She said, no, this one had been cleared. The other one had not, which is a little weird. But again, if they're going to insure it, so I was a little worried that
you trusted the system too much.
I trusted the system. Well, I trusted the contract and I trusted, And so my original fear was like, I wonder if one of these heirs may come out of the woodwork and give me a problem. That's really what I was worried about. And I thought, well, if I got title insurance, then that won't be a problem, right?
This episode is brought to you by Homemade. What is Homemade? Well, glad you asked. Homemade is a turnkey house flipping service we've built to solve the needs of aspiring flippers like you who want to get started in house flipping but want to do it with the backing of a professional and experienced team. We've designed Homemade so that our team will be with you through every step of your house flipping journey. Our team will deliver investment-grade properties straight to your inbox. We'll work with you to design your project to maximize ROI. We'll oversee the renovations and handle all the permitting requirements. Along the way, we'll hook you up with our vetted network of service providers to help finance, insure, and stage your property. Once your project is wrapped, we'll be with you arm in arm to execute your exit plan, whether that's through a sale as a flip or holding the property in your personal portfolio as either a long or short-term rental. At Homemade, we've taken the outdated and frustrating house flipping process and turned it into a seamless and rewarding experience so that novice and even seasoned flippers can have access to this investment class without having to delve too deep into the nitty-gritty everyday headaches that this business often entails. At Homemade, we do the heavy lifting for you. So if you've always wanted to flip a house, head on over to homemade.co to learn more about our platform and apply to work with us. That's homemade.co. Peace.
So that was red flag number 2. So, but I was like, okay, we got this sorted out.
But let's say, sorry. if you got the property, right, and let's say the title insurance policy worked.
Yep.
You got a proper one, and you said you got an offer within 6 days for X, and you sell it within those 6 days. I mean, highly unlikely that the heir would come out of the woodwork in those 6 days, right?
Totally.
So then would you just be off the hook on as far as that? Like they would have to come to the new.
Yeah. So when I sold it, we would get a brand new title policy, and then it would insure that transaction for that amount. So let's say that heir came out of the woodwork in 2 years, 10 years,
Nothing
whatever.
To do with you.
Nothing to do with me. I would have already been paid. It would be on that new policies issue.
Okay. So the claim is always against the latest policy that's been issued.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Your insurance policy is for your ownership of it. And you wouldn't come and sue a previous owner of that because they don't own the property anymore. You'd sue the current owner of it.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So we worked through that. So, okay, little weird, but they've looked back at the chain of title, the title company has, and they've said, no, this one's good. So I was like, okay, we should be good to go. So then we went to close on it, and there was another red flag.
Uh-oh.
So right before closing, title called and said, hey, we have to delay closing. We found a lien on the property from, they found what was called a memorandum of purchase and sale, which basically is someone else stepping in and saying, no, you can't sell that property to Lincoln because I had a contract with the seller to buy it.
Mm.
And we've done this before. So like in Texas, like when you sign a contract to sell your property to me, I, as the buyer, a lot of times will have what's called an option period. So basically like I pay for the option to buy it, but I can back out.
Yeah.
You as the seller don't have the option to back out of that contract.
You have to sell it to me.
You have to sell it. And
Okay.
sometimes sellers will change their mind and say, yeah, you know what? I don't want to. And at that point you say, well, we have a contract. So people will go file what's called a memorandum of purchase and sale, saying like, hey, you can't sell that to somebody else. You got to fulfill our
because
deal.
it's like, okay, let's say I'm selling my house for $500,000. You offer me $500,000, and I say yes. And then the next day somebody comes and says, I'll pay you $515,000. And I'm like, oh, wait a second.
Exactly.
I want to get out of this one.
Exactly. It prevents people from doing that.
Okay.
Exactly. So I was like, someone came out of the woodwork at the 11th hour of this deal to say, no, you can't sell it because I bought it. And I was like, so this is where my second fear came into play, because what I was really concerned with was that basically this person might be trying to sell the same property twice, right? So in theory, a scammer I could sell a contract to you, I could sell a contract to some 3 people, try and close all on the same day or whatever.
With different title companies, so they
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to see that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I was worried about that. Title insurance should protect from something like that as well. Well, what it turns out, who this person was another buyer that had both of those properties under contract. So you remember it was property A and property B. They were trying to buy both of them because they were both a steal.
Slamming good deals.
They were slamming good deals. And what happened was basically when one of them came up with title issues and not the other, the seller said to this buyer, hey, well,
Was it the same person selling him?
yeah, same
Okay.
person. So they said, well, hey, Mr. Buyer, we've got issues on A, but not B. You need to close on B. And the buyer, I don't know why, said, no, I'm not closing unless I can close on both of them. I don't know why they would do it. Why you wouldn't just take property B, wait on property A. But they thought they could basically force her hand to selling them both. And she said, no, you're in breach of your contract. Just because you didn't get both of them. And they were right. They should have purchased one. So it was not really a valid memorandum of purchase and sale. But all of that is to say, they're really hard to get rid of these things without having to go to court. And I thought, okay, well, this deal is just going to die on the vine. They're going to sort it out. But to my surprise, they worked out some sort of settlement. So she agreed, the seller that was going to sell it to me agreed to pay them off some amount.
Okay.
I didn't learn until later it was like $25,000 that she agreed. She said, hey, I'll give you $25,000 to go away. keep in mind, they were thinking they were going to probably make $125,000.
Right.
So,
But still sus.
Yeah, a little bit. But I didn't know that. So it wasn't disclosed to me at the time, like how much she paid them to go away.
Mm-hmm.
If I had known that amount, I would have been much more suspicious. But a lot of times it can be a token $1,000, $5,000 amount to just say, hey, I can sue you and you'll get nothing, or take $5,000 and go away. And that's fairly common as well. But 25 was a lot. I didn't learn this until after the fact.
Okay.
But so this was like yet another red flag, but that got resolved.
Okay.
Are you trekking with me? But we haven't even gotten to the shady part of this whole deal.
Oh my gosh.
So we close on the deal.
Yeah.
And it was still a little weird. I went to Wally Tingley's office to sign it.
What is his office like? I'm curious. Is it like in a...
It's just a nondescript little office park thing.
Okay, I was picturing like a classroom portable kind of thing.
It was,
like a...
No, it was a lot like Better Call Saul's office.
Okay.
It was just nondescript thing. And the closing officer, her name is Mick, she was like, wow, well, I can't believe we got through this one. I really didn't think this one should have closed. And I was like, it was a weird thing. I was like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, no, I just, there's a lot of issues. I was like, okay, but like,
They're solved,
right? And she said, yeah. We would have never closed it if we weren't confident we had resolved all the issues. Okay.
Never say never.
Okay, great. Done deal. So, and this is where it got like crazy. So I turned around and I listed this thing on the MLS for $300,000. I got 3 or 4 offers on it in a week, one for $325,000. I'll never forget. I was driving back.
And so when you closed, you sent the funds to the seller.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. We closed. So we closed. I went in and I signed the deed over to them. I signed all the closing documents and I wired $200,000 to Wally Tingley and said, go pay the seller. And associates. I said, here's $200,000, wire out the door. Done deal. I own the property. They recorded the deed with the county. So they said, this guy now Lincoln owns it. It's in the records. Moving on. I was like, great. I own it. It's just like any other transaction I've ever done.
So you go list.
So I list it. I get 3 offers, one's for $325,000. I'm like, great. I was literally like, I was going to sign this offer, but I was driving home to see my parents. This was over Labor Day weekend. They were having a party. So it was like
so you didn't get a chance to sign.
Yeah, it was like a 3.5 hour drive. I would have signed it, but it came in during that drive. I was like, great. And I'll never forget, on that drive, I get a call from a woman named Cindy Tolliver.
Okay.
The plot thickens. She works at Texas Title. I've never spoken with Cindy Tolliver. I didn't know this woman.
Okay.
And I really only dealt with Wally Tingley's office. I didn't deal with Texas Title, but Wally Tingley, as you'll remember, was a fee attorney for Texas Title. Mm-hmm. She says, hey, I don't remember her position of president or whatever at Texas Title. So anyway, I get a call from Cindy Tolliver at Texas Title.
Okay.
And she says, hey, Lincoln, how did you know the seller of this property? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, who is she and how do you know her? I'm like, well, I don't know her. She was wholesaling a deal to me. Looked like a good deal.
Right.
And she's a little cagey with me. I'm like, what? Why? What's going on? And she kind of hems and haws. And then she's like, well, we think that the deed that she used to buy the property from the previous seller was a forgery.
Okay.
I'm like, what?
Right.
She's like, we think she didn't really own that property. We think she forged the deed and then sold it to you as a fraud. I'm like, come
again?
Right. We closed on this deal a week ago.
Right.
I'm like, what do you mean? Why on earth would you think that? She's like, she's super suspicious of me. Like barely, I'm like, what's going on here? Well, as it turns out, we closed the deal and wired out those funds, and they wired the funds to the seller. And she took the money and tried to withdraw it from her bank account.
Okay.
And that triggered a flag at the bank. When you try and withdraw that amount of money at once, I guess it sort of auto flags something for that.
Okay.
So they froze the money, didn't let her withdraw it or all of it. She withdrew, I guess, I don't know how much of it, a bunch of it. And then they alerted the
then
title
she booked a
company.
trip to Mexico.
Yeah. Well, we still don't know what happened to her, by the way. She's in the wind. But the bank said, whoa, that amount of money is a little suspect. So they called Texas Title and said, hey, did you really mean to send $200K to them? They thought it was wire fraud.
Oh.
And so I'm like, okay, well, so why do you think it was a forged deed? She's like, well, someone said the word fraud. And we're like, okay, but it was the right amount, right? She's like, yeah. I was like, and it was to the right seller, right? Yeah. Okay, so why didn't you tell them we're good to go?
Right.
Well, we had no idea what to think. And I was like, what? Why on earth? So apparently that triggered them to then actually go look at the chain of title.
Do their job.
So what they were supposed to have done prior to this is look at that chain of title and find things like forged deeds.
So who is supposed to do that? The lawyers or the title company?
Well, that is a great question. And that's that's part of the PSA of this. And so ultimately we had to sue them, and they pointed the finger at each other. So WFG, the underwriter, said Texas Title needs to do it. Texas Title said, no, that's Wally Tingley's job. And Wally Tingley said, no, we just put the documents in front of him and close it. We don't look at the title. That's Texas Title's job. And
so then it's like the Spider-Man.
Exactly, the Spider-Man meme. So that was part of it. Ultimately, it was Texas Title's job to do it. And that's why they did it as soon as...
That's their business.
Exactly. That's their whole business. And I, as you can imagine, I was.
So what happens? Someone just slacked on the job?
Yeah, I think basically that was it.
Or somebody working on the inside of Texas Title.
I think they didn't look at it or they assumed.
Just negligence.
It was just negligence. I think they assumed that Wally Tingley was doing it, and Wally Tingley assumed they were doing it. No one was really doing it. Or if they were doing it, they weren't looking very closely at things like signatures on deeds or whatever. And so I was pissed, obviously, at this woman. And I was like, why on earth did you not examine the title in the month prior to this? That's what you were doing. You sent a title commitment where it says, hey, we'll insure this. This has basically clean title. And she was like, oh, well, we wouldn't have looked at that in the month. Well, actually, at that point, she was mostly concerned that I was in on it.
Like you were in cahoots with the seller?
She thought I was in cahoots with the seller. She kept asking about that. And I became more and more irate. And she was like, well, I can't understand why you're so mad at this, about this. And I said, well, because Cindy, I just paid you for a title policy that you didn't check the title. And I just wired $200,000 to someone that you're saying now defrauded me.
Right.
And I have a contract in my inbox to sell this thing for $125,000 profit that I cannot sell now, or what should I do on that? She said, well, frankly, I would want to know if my deed had been forged. And I said, yeah, I did want to know that.
A month ago.
Right. And I paid you for that. And she said, well, frankly, the fact that you're so defensive makes me think that you had something to do with this. And I can't prove it yet, but I know that you're in on this somehow.
Whoa.
Can you believe that?
Wow.
My jaw hit the floor, and then I was irate. Then she hung up. And I was like, so pissed. So I looked up her boss. Her boss's name is a guy named Claude Rich.
Okay.
And I call up Claude Rich, and I'm like, what's the deal, man? He was the head honcho over there. And he was mortified. I was like, hey, Cindy just accused me of fraud. What's going on with this? I need my title policy. Where are we at with this? And he was like, yeah, we'll get you a title policy. I don't know how this happened. And then
I thought you already had the title policy because you closed.
Well, that's a great point. Yes. You would think I would have had the title policy.
Right. So how does it close without that?
That is the point of the whole lawsuit. That is, you hit the nail on the head. That's the whole point of the lawsuit. So basically, Texas Department of Insurance has regulations that say, what is closing? Right. Basically, closing is like signing the documents to close, wiring the money to the seller, filing a deed. That's about it. A down date title search, which was basically the crux of this whole lawsuit, which we'll get into. But basically, a down date title search, what it's supposed to be, is they look at the title when you first put the property under contract and say, yeah, we'll insure it or not. But then a down date search is what killed the deal originally, because they go and look at title again and see if any liens or anything's been filed between when you put it under contract.
That's where they found the memorandum for purchase.
Exactly. That's when they found the first one. They did a down date title search. And they're supposed to basically do that when you close to make sure nothing has popped up in the meantime.
Right.
They did that on mine.
Right.
Didn't find anything.
Mm-hmm.
But they later claimed maybe they did find something. We'll get into it.
Okay.
I know. Are you?
I'm at the edge of my seat.
Are you with me here?
I'm riveted.
Massiel, is this tracking at all?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm invested.
All right, you're invested. I want to make sure people are invested here. Claude Rich he apologized, and I asked for the title policy. And to your point, it's supposed to get issued once that deal closes. And so I actually got a note from Cindy saying, yeah, we'll send you the title policy. But actually, the physical policy itself, they have something like 90 days or whatever, or maybe it's 180 days, but they send it to you after the fact.
Okay.
So they're supposed to send it, you're due it once it closes, but they have up to that long to issue it to you. And I was like, well, send that to me immediately.
Right.
Because
you wanted to be able to go through with the sale of this other offer.
Well, I asked them about that. I said, well, what do you mean you think this deed was forged? And they said, well, we're not sure, but the signature looks fishy. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with fishy? Is that you're saying it was forged and I can't sell this, or it's insurable? Well, we don't know. I was like, so I can't sell it, or I just have to sit on this thing? I don't know, but I would advise you not to sell it. And I was like, okay, well, I said, well, would you guys insure the deal on the back end since you insured mine if I go to sell it, and then let the new buyers deal with this if it's really an issue or not? Well, no, at this point, we wouldn't do that. I was like, so you won't reinsure it a week after you just insured it with the same set of facts. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, now I'm just stuck. I don't know if I actually own this thing. I can't sell it. I was like, do you have my money? Can you get my money back? No, it's gone.
It's in Mexico.
It's in wherever. Yeah, Mexico. It's like, so no money, maybe no property.
Could they put a freeze on the money that was in her account?
So they tried, and ultimately they did freeze a portion of it. The Secret Service did. So
really?
The Secret Service handles wire fraud.
I had no idea.
I learned that. But yeah, so they ultimately got a portion of it. And so I ultimately got some of this money back.
Okay.
Spoiler. But at the time,
you didn't know.
Didn't know that. And so I talked to Claude Rich, the owner of Texas Title. I was so mad. I was like, Cindy needs to issue an apology. She's accused me of fraud at this point, etc. And I was livid. And so at first he apologized, and I was like, well, I need the money back. I need whatever. Ultimately, he then also accused me of fraud and said I should talk to a lawyer, and that they were going to contact the FBI about me and report me to the FBI on this. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Right. Wow.
So then they stopped taking my calls at all. So I couldn't even talk to them. Accused me of fraud, said they were going to report me to the FBI, won't give my money back. What is going on here? So at that point I had to get a lawyer, right? Obviously. And this is where it got even crazier. So as it turns out, the lawyer that I hired was like, well, you can't sue them first. First, you have to sue the previous owner of the property, because basically you have to establish if he actually sold it or not. Because if he really sold it, then you do own it and you're all good. We have to he has to legally say.
He has to say that signature was not fishy. It was accurate.
Exactly. Or vice versa. If he says, no, hey, it was fraud, I didn't own it, then I can turn around and sue the title company. Right.
Okay.
But I have no basis to sue them on if
it's legit.
If it's legit.
Right.
So I was like, well, this feels wrong to sue somebody that also probably was a victim of this fraud. But suing is sort of the wrong term. I wasn't trying to get money from him. We were basically trying to say, hey man, you need to say, do you own this or not? Well, we could not find this guy anywhere. It took us months. And what's crazy about this is that you try to serve them. If you can't find them, you have to post a notice. There's all these, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but there's this legal standard by which you can serve someone if you can't get a hold of them. And basically what's crazy is we were going to sue him. And if they don't respond, you just sort of win by default. And I was like, this feels really wrong. I'm about to win this guy's property and he might have actually
been
frauded. That doesn't feel right. And whatever. So, but then on the 11th hour, it's He has 30 days to respond. On the 30th day, he responds. And it's like, no, I didn't sell that property. I'll see you in our not arbitration, but we had to go get a deposition or statement from him. So we go and sort of like depose him with my lawyer. And we're like, hey, Mr. Seller, did you sell that property? No, I didn't. Do you know who the seller was? No idea. But what's crazy is he's like, well, some woman showed up to my house with a legal document and I signed it. And we're like,
that was the wholesaler?
No. We're like, who showed up? And this man is a 90-year-old man.
Okay.
Like, so it was like,
don't sign anything as someone comes to your
he
door.
Don't
sign it.
A notary came to his door with a document.
PSA.
He had no idea what it was. And he said he just signed it. Well,
Yeah.
turns out it was an affidavit of fraud. So it was a document saying, hey,
I've been frauded.
I never sold the property. That was fraud. And we were like, that's really weird. You didn't ask for that. I mean, it worked for him. Like he needed to do that.
Right.
But we were like, who would have sent that to you? No idea. And you just signed it? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, guess who sent it? The title company.
Whoa.
Texas Title sent a lawyer to his house to.
How did you find that out?
Oh, well,
it was them.
they told us.
Okay.
Yeah, as it turns out. What's even crazier about that is when we deposed Claude Rich to ask him why they had done that. His answer was like, "Oh yeah, gee, it was just the right thing to do. We didn't want him to be defrauded." And what's crazy is that the lawyer that they had draft that affidavit for him used to represent a white supremacy group in Ohio. And the seller, the 90-year-old man, was a black man. So they were saying his claim was that the right thing to do, their white supremacist lawyer, was to just draft a document for this black man when he has anyway, that's a crazy rabbit hole. But his claim was not because they didn't want to try and get out of paying this claim. It was just
the CYA.
Not because it was a CYA move, but because it was just the right thing to do. And so that was ultimately the crux of this whole case. So we established that the previous seller didn't actually sell it. And so then now we sue the title company. And it was a big mess. To the point earlier, like basically they start pointing the fingers at each other. Right. And they say, no, it was their fault. It was their fault. So it is a years-long process.
Oh my gosh.
So this all happened in 2017. Like we didn't get resolution on it until like 2021 or two, like multiple years. But what is the craziest part is we lost the lawsuit.
Really?
Yeah. Lost it. Flat out. Didn't get a trial jury. Didn't get any day in court. This is what I didn't know about like the legal process. It was just a bench trial. So basically, a judge just read sort of the briefings and motions from the lawyers and was like, yeah, I've got enough to rule on this, and makes a ruling that we lose. So no actual day in court, no jury or your peers, none of this stuff that you think actually happens to get justice in it. And basically there's no reasoning. Like there were no points. It was just like, you lose. That's no reason why, basically.
Wow.
And so when you go to appeal it, and it's even harder, you can't even really appeal, because if he had basically given us a reason. So the reason that we got on appeal was that, and this is why this has implications for title insurance for the entire state of Texas. So basically what the judge in the case said was, when you sign this closing statement, you sign, and I signed, a statement as part of that says, I agree that although the deed has been recorded, funds have been distributed, and we're closing, a final down date search of the title can undo all of that. And you'll remember this down date search of the title is the search you do at the very last minute to say,
make sure they're not closing on the same day.
Exactly. And they have, like I said, they have the right to like undo it if anything's there on the 11th hour. And so they basically
But
said,
can you down date after the fact?
well, that is why this has implications
Right.
for all of title insurance, because we argued that a down date title search has to end right then on the day of closing.
Right.
And the judge didn't, I don't think, even consider that. But basically, their argument is a down date title search can happen whenever. Basically, they have no statute of limitations. And what's even crazier is that they said there was a cloud on the title from a down date search. Well, that cloud on the title was the affidavit of fraud that they filed on the property.
So they filed their own cloud
They filed their own cloud on the title
to nullify any obligation
to
they have.
get themselves out of the
Wow.
obligation, and said, we've got the right to file that. So if you've got title insurance in Texas, my court case ruling basically says your title company that issued you that policy, if they at any point don't want to issue that, they can, after your closing, go file a lien, go file a memorandum of purchase and say, go file a fraud of affidavit, go file some cloud on title and say, you, Mr. Buyer, didn't cure the lien, the cloud that we filed on your property, and therefore we don't owe you a title policy. And a judge agreed with that. And what's even worse than that is that after all of this, I was like, this can't stand, because there are rules about this. And we had in their own evidence that they marked down date search. Like they had checked off that they had done it that day.
Yeah.
So like the idea that they ran the search after the fact was like completely bogus.
Right.
And even, like I said, the search wouldn't have turned up anything because they created something.
Right.
So what's even crazier than this is that then after that, I filed a complaint with the Texas Department of Insurance. And the Texas Department of Insurance, I tried to file a complaint way earlier, and they said, oh, well, if there's an active lawsuit, we can't get involved until it's resolved. And then I filed a complaint with the Texas Department of Insurance. I emailed Cassie Brown, who's the head of the Texas Department of Insurance even. Like I tried to escalate it to her. And their response was, oh, well, if it's been settled in a lawsuit, we can't get involved. And I was like, I don't think you understand. Like they've violated your rules of procedure on how to close this thing.
Right.
And you guys don't have any interest in getting involved? No interest in clearing that up. No interest in like forcing them to issue the title policy. No interest in reprimanding WFG, Texas Title, Wally Tingley, anybody. Like no interest whatsoever in protecting consumers from being scammed by title insurance. And now they've opened up the floodgates to allow this, so that like a down date title search can mean whatever they want it to. And TDI is not going to get involved.
So what do you do?
So I think nothing, right? So this is like the more like the reason I wanted to share this with our audience is like for several like key takeaways for me. I think it's like even the quality of the title insurance company that you trust is paramount.
Should you always be the one to pick title?
I think if you can, you should always be the one to pick title, right? And you should go with a very reputable company. But in this case, WFG, I mean, they should be ashamed of themselves, to be honest, on this, because they are a national underwriter. They're not like a mom and pop or a small time thing. Like they have billions of dollars, and like paying this out as a claim would have been basically nothing to them. They should be ashamed of themselves. But like, you should go with the most reputable brand name that you can. But even then, you should be skeptical. You should always get sort of everything in writing. One of the fishy things that they tried to do is I paid them for the title policy, and they wouldn't issue the policy, and they wouldn't refund the money that I paid them for the title policy. And then something like a year later, after they'd already been sued, they wrote me a check for the title policy amount back and tried to claim that I never paid for it in the first place, or that it'd been refunded, even though we got them to agree in writing that, hey, no, this is just a refund of the amount that was sent to the scammer, not the policy amount. And they agreed to that in writing, and then in the court case tried to claim that they had refunded it, which is just scammy. That was WFG did that. But you should get all of that in writing. We had documented that in writing. Doesn't matter if you don't get a trial jury because we couldn't even refute that.
Right.
So you should 100% like do that. But like for me personally, what I learned, what's crazy is that I lost more money on the legal fees of this. So ultimately, I think about $160,000 got recovered by the Secret Service that got refunded to me. And then I think I got maybe another $20,000 that never made it out. So I got all but maybe 20, 30 grand back ultimately, but I spent way more than that in legal fees. Like that was maybe the biggest scam of this whole thing. Like I did not realize these things rack up just astronomical bills. And like
The cost of being right.
the cost of being right, the cost of being pissed at these people, which I still am. And I think a lot of people that have never been in a lawsuit, if you never actually sued somebody, they stand on that. You're like, well, I'm right and I can sue you. And like, that may be so, you may be right, but like the cost of suing someone is not, I mean, I think in my mind, if I were ever going to sue anybody again, it would have to be for sort of like damages in the millions of dollars, to be honest, because anything below that, that's maybe not like, maybe like a small claims court where you represent yourself. And if you're a lawyer yourself, it's a totally different story. But if you're paying a lawyer to do this, it better be millions of dollars of damages. Otherwise, like you're not going to make it up. And if God forbid you're wrong or you lose, that money is just gone.
Yeah.
It's just gone. Like, and my lawyers kept telling me there's slam dunk. There's no way you lose. This is like open and shut. And then we lost. And it was like, you don't like the justice system. You don't get your day in court necessarily, which was crazy. You think there's justice in this world. Like there's not. So I advise almost anyone not to sue people. Like even if you're mad or whatever, because it's like about you. It's about your, and then, you know, what I would also say, like if anybody watching this or whatever knows, you know, Cassie Brown or anyone at the Texas Department of Insurance, shame on them. Really. You should email them. You should demand consumer protection from like government agencies like that. That's their whole reason for being. They should be ashamed of themselves for not stepping in on this and hiding behind the cloak of like a court case. They had zero interest in this case, zero interest in making this right. One of the discrepancies in this court case too, the Texas Department of Insurance on their website, like they explain what is title insurance and why should you get it. They advocate for it. And one of the things they talk about, this abstract of title, is that it protects you from being defrauded. That's why you should get title insurance. Well, there's actually court cases that refute that. And they say, and that was part of the argument in my case, was that we were saying, hey, you ran title and we relied on that. Well, no, actually legally, they're running title, a check of title for themselves. That's for their benefit because they're insuring it. If you rely on that, that's on you. And the Texas Department
can you run your own title search?
I mean, you could, and you can pay to just have an abstract of title done without insurance. But you're paying for the insurance, not the abstract of title. So
you're not actually getting the.
Well, if you rely on it, it wasn't for you. It's like you relying on, that's like an automotive insurer, like checking your driving record and to see if you're clean, cause they want to know how much to charge you. And then you driving more recklessly because you looked at the driving record and said, oh, I'm a good driver. I can drive however I want. If that makes any sense. No, the check, basically legally, the checking title is for them to say, should I insure this or not for you to say, is this clean or not? But the Texas Department of Insurance's website says the opposite. They say you should get title insurance for that benefit so that you can know if title is clean. And when I asked them about that, like prior to giving them the details of my case, and they confirmed that was the case. And then I gave them the details of my case and they weren't interested in like explaining why that didn't apply to my case. So, I was really disappointed in Texas Department of Insurance. I was really disappointed in WFG. Like they're big enough to know better, but like they're a scummy corporation that like ultimately wants to not have to pay out money. Okay. Texas Department of Insurance should be protecting consumers. Cassie Brown should be protecting consumers. And they absolutely didn't in this case. And so anybody watching this that has a title policy on their house or is thinking about getting one, like you should send this episode to your title company, get their reaction to it. You should, and you should send this to the Texas Department of Insurance, and like we should demand better from people regulating like the industries that are supposed to protect consumers from stuff like this. So that's my takeaways from it.
I was going to say, what are your personal takeaways? Like, how do you approach deals differently after this experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's been the only deal like this that I actually got to fry on. I'm very careful about like wiring instructions for deals. Like, I think if there are red flags, what was crazy is all the red flags like weren't the things that made the deal scammy, but it was still a scam. So it's sort of like maybe when there's smoke, there's fire. Like, so, I don't know, but I've also done deals that had like all these same red flags that worked out great. So it's a little hard to know that. But like personally, I learned like the most expensive thing in this world is an ego. Egos are so expensive. Like if you think about people getting in any kind of like pissing contests, it might be over like contracts or business deals or divorces or whatever. People will pay any amount of money to be right. And I was one of those people. I wanted to be right. I had that righteous indignation, and I was right in this case. And it cost me so much money to be right. And ultimately, I didn't even get the satisfaction of that. So, I think you can save yourself a lot of money if you check your ego. You can still be right. You can still know in your heart that you're right. But like ultimately, sometimes proving somebody else wrong, it's not going to make you feel better. It's not going to probably help your wallet at all. And so I don't know, you need to check your bank account, to see if your ego is too expensive for you. That was a massive takeaway for me personally.
Yeah.
What did you learn from my experience here?
What did I learn from this
experience? What's your
experience?
takeaway? Massiel, did you learn anything? You going to get title insurance, when you buy a house someday?
This is a really good takeaway of like making sure you are checking everything you can. And if there's something that sounds fishy, it might be.
Yeah. I'd say buyer beware. I'm guilty of signing things without reading them in full, no one's coming to my house with any paperwork, but
yeah. And I would say like, if you've got older relatives that own property or whatever, really. I would talk to them about that. And, we could do a whole episode on it, but like,
trust your gut. Like,
totally.
I mean, I think there were a few opportunities to veer course and it was like powering through, but I mean, to your point, they got cleared up, but it's like, if there's a series of, people show you who they are.
Yeah.
You got to believe
totally
them.
True. Yeah. And learn from my mistake. Like I said at the top of the show, like this is really for y'all's benefit, the audience, to like learn from this mistake, take the lessons from it that you can, and don't experience the same painful lessons that I did. Leave a 1-star review for naughty title companies.
But not this podcast. Make sure you leave a 5-star review. Make sure you're subscribed. Yeah.
Thanks for sticking with us on a super long episode. Hope this was informative. Hope you guys learned a little something. Thanks for letting us rant on this episode, and make sure you're subscribed, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.